The call came in just after sunset. Shots fired during a suspected armed robbery at a downtown pawnshop. Officer Ray Miller and his K-9 partner Max were already en route before dispatch finished the sentence. Ray had always trusted his instincts, and Max had never let him down. As they pulled up to the scene, the street was chaos. Civilians screamed from behind parked cars. A wounded clerk lay slumped behind the counter, and inside the shop, the suspect was still armed, desperate and cornered. Ray didn't hesitate. He gave Max the signal. The German shepherd surged forward, agile and fearless, slipping through the broken entrance like a shadow. Seconds later, Ray followed. Inside, time warped. The gunman saw Max coming and fired wildly. Max dodged, tackled the man to the ground, locking onto his arm. But the suspect had another weapon, a hidden blade, and in the split second, Ray reached. To assist, a shot rang out. It was Ray who took the bullet, right in the neck. He collapsed on the floor, motionless. Max let go of the suspect and ran to Ray, howling. Blood pooled quickly. Officers stormed in moments later, disarming the suspect, cuffing him, shouting commands. But none of it mattered. Max was still next to Ray's body, nudging him, pawing at his chest, refusing to accept what just happened. As paramedics rushed in, they struggled to peel Max away. He growled at them, not out of aggression, but desperation. When they finally lifted Ray onto the stretcher, Max jumped, trying to follow. One of the EMTs had to physically hold him back. "No dogs allowed," someone said, but one of the officers overruled it. "That's not a dog, that's his partner." Max was allowed into the ambulance. He sat with his muzzle against Ray's shoulder the entire way, breathing hard, whimpering softly. Every bump in the road felt like a countdown. At the hospital, chaos took over. Trauma team, emergency surgery, blood transfusions, tubes, beeping monitors, sharp words. Max was led out, confused, reluctant, resisting, but they wouldn't allow him in the operating room. For the first time in his life, Max was separated from Ray, and he didn't know what to do with the silence that followed. Hours passed. Then a nurse came into the waiting area. She didn't speak right away. Her expression said enough. Ray had lost too much blood. Oxygen deprivation, severe brain damage. He was now in a coma, one so deep doctors called it irreversible, a state that was, in medical terms, incompatible with meaningful recovery. In 48 hours, the hospital would begin life support withdrawal procedures. Ray's family was devastated. Fellow officers cried quietly in the hallway. And Max simply lay down at the base of the door to the ICU, unmoving. He hadn't eaten, he wouldn't drink. He was waiting. 2 days later, permission was granted. One final visit. It wasn't standard protocol, but this wasn't a standard dog. The nurses had seen enough police funerals to understand what was sacred. As they led Max into the sterile white room where Ray lay pale and still beneath the machines, something odd happened. Max didn't walk in like a grieving dog. He stopped halfway across the room, head tilted. His ears perked. His muscles tensed, and then he growled. It was low, deep. Not threatening, but focused, intent. The nurse holding his leash froze. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked gently. Max didn't blink. His eyes were fixed on Ray's chest. A place no longer expected to move. He began to walk forward, not slowly, but with a kind of quiet urgency. No whimpering now, no tail wagging, only tension. Like a soldier spotting something no one else could see, the staff exchanged uncertain glances. What was he sensing? No one knew yet, but Max did, and he wasn't here to say goodbye. He was here to stop something. The room was unnaturally quiet, save for the gentle hum of machines and the slow rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Officer Ray Miller lay still, tubes threaded through his arms, chest rising and falling mechanically. His face, once stern and full of quiet strength, was now pale, slack. His badge sat in a frame beside the bed, already treated like a memory. The nurse tightened her grip on Max's leash, suddenly unsure. She'd expected a somber farewell. The loyal partner gently laying down, maybe whining, maybe nudging Ray's hand one last time, but Max wasn't behaving like a dog saying goodbye. He was locked in, focused, alert, the kind of alert that had saved Ray's life more than once. Max took one more step forward, then stopped beside the bed. His nose twitched rapidly. He sniffed the air, tilted his head, and then raised his front paws, placing them gently on the edge of the hospital bed. "Easy, Max," the nurse whispered, but Max didn't flinch. His ears were pinned forward, eyes scanning Ray's face. Then down to his chest, then to the base of his throat. He was searching, not for comfort, for something else, something wrong. He leaned closer and gave a short, sharp sniff near Ray's collarbone. Then, without warning, he barked, loud, sudden, piercing. Everyone in the room jumped. The nurse nearly lost grip of the leash. Max barked again, this time with more urgency. "Is he sensing something?" another nurse asked, stepping closer. "I don't know. I've never seen him like this," the first replied. Max was trained for many things: drugs, bombs, danger, fear. But this bark, this wasn't part of protocol, this was instinct. The door opened and in walked Dr. Lenhart, the attending physician. He glanced at Max with disapproval. "I hope that dog isn't disturbing the peace in here," he muttered, flipping open Ray's chart. Max immediately shifted. He turned and placed himself between Dr. Lenhart and the hospital bed, body low and firm like a wall. He didn't growl. He didn't bark again. He just stood there, still, tense, daring him to move closer. "Back him off," Dr. Lenhart snapped, looking to the nurse. "This isn't a circus." But the nurse hesitated. She was watching Max closely now. "Doctor, I think something's off. He's not acting out. He's acting like he sees something we don't." Dr. Lenhart raised an eyebrow. "The man has been unresponsive for 48 hours. Brain scans confirm extensive loss of function. I appreciate the sentiment, but this isn't a movie." Just then Max nudged forward. His nose dipped down and he sniffed Ray's neck again. This time, he made a strange whine, deep, shaky, like he'd just smelled something dangerous. Then, he did something no one expected. Max stood up on his hind legs and placed both front paws gently, yet firmly on Ray's chest. Not to hurt him, but to protect him, like he was guarding something alive. "Max, get down," the nurse gasped. "Get that animal off him, now," Dr. Lenhart demanded. But the heart monitor beeped, twice, fast, then steady again. The nurse's eyes widened. "Did you hear that?" They all turned to look at the monitor. A moment ago, Ray's vitals were flat, automatic. Now there was a tiny shift, almost imperceptible, but real, a fluctuation, a blip that hadn't been there before. The nurse took a step forward and shined a penlight into Ray's eye. It twitched. "Doctor," she whispered, voice trembling, "his pupil." "Just responded." Dr. Lenhart looked at the screen again, his arrogance draining into confusion. "Run another neuro check, now." Max still hadn't moved. He stood like a statue, chest pressed to Ray's, unmoving, except for his eyes. They were locked on the doctor like a warning, because Max didn't just believe Ray was still alive, he knew it, and he wasn't letting anyone pull that plug. The room wasn't silent anymore. A quiet panic had replaced the resignation that had hung in the air just moments ago. Nurses hurried to recheck monitors. Dr. Lenhart's face, once calm and clinical, was now lined with uncertainty. Max remained, frozen, still pressed to Ray's chest like a living shield, every muscle taut. "Somebody sedate that dog before he hurts the patient," Lenhart barked, trying to reclaim authority. But no one moved. Even the usually obedient intern by the crash. Cart stood paralyzed, eyes flicking from Max to the monitor. Another blip. A faint flicker of heart rhythm, not artificial, not machine-generated, natural, real. The senior nurse, Angela, took a shaky breath and stepped toward the bed. "Wait, look at his neck." They all turned. Ray's neck had been still since his arrival, unmoving, lifeless. But now, under the glow of the overhead lights, a faint flutter pulsed beneath the skin. Max noticed it first. His ears twitched. His body shifted slightly, nose brushing that exact spot, as if confirming what only he could sense. Angela leaned closer, placing 2 fingers gently on Ray's carotid artery. She counted, then again. Her eyes widened. "I have a pulse," she whispered, Dr. Lenhart was already reaching for a flashlight. "No, that's impossible. The scans were 12 hours ago," Angela interrupted, her voice stronger. "Now, things can change, and Max, he knew, Lenhart wasn't ready to admit defeat. Microspasms, nerve noise, it happens." But then Ray's finger twitched. Subtle, quick, but it happened again. Angela gasped. "That's voluntary. Look." Everyone in the room leaned in. Ray's index finger was moving, just slightly, just enough to matter. Max stepped down off Ray's chest, but didn't move far. He sat at the side of the bed now, head tilted, eyes fixed on Ray's face as if waiting. "For the next sign, he's coming back," Angela breathed. "How the hell did the dog know before us?" Dr. Lenhart didn't respond. His mouth hung open slightly, staring at the man he'd nearly declared gone. A doctor of 25 years, outdiagnosed by a dog, a police dog. "Run a neuropanel. Draw blood. Full scan now," he finally ordered, his voice cracking. As the team jumped into action, Angela crouched down beside Max and met his eyes. "You saved him," she whispered. Max blinked, then pressed his nose softly into Ray's palm. It didn't twitch this time, but it didn't lie limp either. It held weight, warmth, presence. Back at the desk, a stunned orderly re-watched the security camera footage from a few minutes earlier. The moment Max barked, then blocked the doctor. She hit replay, then again. Each time it was more unbelievable. The internet would lose its mind. Dog senses owner is still alive and stops the doctors from pulling the plug. Angela looked back at the door. In the hallway, Ray's sister was crying, moments ago. From grief, now from hope. The nurse stepped out and gently touched her shoulder. "There's been a change. You might want to come in." "Change?" she asked through tears. Angela nodded. "It's Max." He knew before anyone else. Inside, the machines hummed a different tune now, one of uncertainty, of possibility. Max didn't move from his post beside the bed, but if you looked closely you could see the tip of his tail, just barely, starting to wag. Dr. Lenhart was rattled. He'd spent 2 decades wrapped in sterile certainty. Numbers, scans, protocols. The machine said Ray Miller was gone. The MRI said he wouldn't come back. He'd signed the form himself, recommended withdrawal of life support. But now, a flicker of brain activity, a heartbeat trying to steady. Dog that had sensed it before any of the machines did. Lenhart couldn't say it aloud, but his hands were shaking. Still, he wasn't ready to surrender control. "We proceed carefully," he said. "This could be residual nerve response. Let's not get carried away." Angela, the head nurse, bit back a reply. She looked at Max, still curled by the side of the bed, his body touching Ray's arm like an anchor. "He's not leaving that bed," she said softly. "And neither are we," but Lenhart wasn't convinced. "We'll prep for another neurological scan in the morning. For now, I want the canine removed." "No," Angela said immediately. "He stays." Lenhart looked at her in disbelief. "This is a sterile environment. This is a miracle," she cut in, "and he's the one who saw it first." Lenhart's jaw clenched. "This is still my patient. And that," she said, nodding toward Max, "is his partner." The doctor turned away without another word and exited the room, slamming the chart shut in his hands. Minutes later, an orderly came in, clipboard in hand. Dr. Lenhart said to begin preliminary sedation. He wants to observe muscle reflexes. Angela narrowed her eyes. "Now?" "He says if there's any movement left, he needs to rule out involuntary spasms." Max was already on his feet before the orderly took a step. He growled. Low, ominous, the sound of something ancient rising in warning. The orderly stopped cold. Max took a slow, deliberate step forward, his hackles raised. He positioned himself between Ray and the approaching syringe like a living wall. "Don't," Angela said firmly. "Do not go near him. I'm just following orders, and Max is following instinct. And so am I." Angela turned to the machine, heart rate slightly elevated, oxygen steady. Then she looked at Ray's hand again. His pinky finger moved, twitched once, then again. "Jesus," the orderly whispered. Angela stepped closer and held Ray's hand between hers. Ray, if you can hear me, squeeze. The room held its breath. Nothing. Then a soft pressure, so faint it could have been imagined. But Angela had worked long enough to know when it wasn't. Squeeze again, she said more urgently now. Another twitch, slightly stronger. Max whimpered. His eyes darted between the human faces in the room, then back to Ray's. Forget the sedation, Angela said, grabbing the clipboard and snapping it shut. Get the neurologist. Now. The orderly was already halfway out the door. Angela crouched beside Max and placed a hand on his back. You knew, she whispered, all this time. Max let out a slow, low sigh and rested his head on the edge of the mattress again. It was as if he'd just passed a torch. For hours, Max stayed motionless, eyes never leaving Ray's face. The hospital room had transformed, no longer a place of grief. It was a battlefield of hope. In the hallway, Lenhart stood watching through the observation glass. His ego raged, but he couldn't ignore what he'd seen. The man he'd prepared to let go was still fighting. And the dog had never stopped. The morning sun streamed through the window, golden and warm, cutting across the sterile hospital floor like hope in solid form. Max hadn't moved all night. He lay with his head beside Ray's hand, occasionally nudging it gently with his nose, like checking on a sleeping soldier during watch duty. In the last 12 hours, Ray had twitched 4 more times. Once with his hand, once with his toes. Twice his lips parted slightly as if trying to speak or breathe on his own. It wasn't a full recovery, but it was enough to make the neurologist, Dr. Sims, call for a full reassessment, enough to cancel the life support withdrawal, and enough to send a ripple of disbelief through the entire hospital. He shouldn't be doing this, Sims muttered, scrolling through Ray's latest brain scan. By all logic, this kind of recovery is impossible. Angela watched Max. Then maybe logic isn't driving this. Down in the waiting area, Ray's sister Emily was on the phone with a local news station. Someone had posted the hallway security footage online, the one where Max blocked Dr. Lenhart from approaching the bed. In less than 6 hours, it had over 300,000 views. Police dog refuses to let doctors declare officer dead. Thoughtheres. Media was already circling, but inside the ICU something more important was happening. Ray Miller's eyelids flickered. Angela gasped. She stepped closer, heart hammering. Ray, can you hear me? No movement. Then, his eyes opened. They didn't. Focus right away. Just a glassy stare at the ceiling. But he was awake, conscious, present. Max shot up, tail stiff, ears alert. He let out a sudden bark, a sharp one, not a warning, but a call. Angela was already at Ray's side. Ray, squeeze my hand. This time he did. Not a twitch. A squeeze. Real. Intentional. Angela blinked tears from her eyes and turned toward the door. Get Sims, now! When Dr. Sims rushed in minutes later, he was speechless. Ray was awake. Barely. Weakly, but awake. He couldn't speak yet, and he couldn't move much, but his eyes tracked the voices in the room. They followed Angela. Then, more importantly, they landed on Max. Max barked again, and this time, a weak, broken smile formed on Ray's lips. It was the kind of smile that doesn't happen unless the soul behind it is fighting to come back. Angela knelt beside the bed. He never left you, Ray, not for a second. Sims whispered. We need to run a full neurofunction suite immediately. He may have locked-in syndrome or... But then Ray's hand began to form letters with his fingers on the blanket. A slow, shaky movement. Angela recognized it. She'd seen it before. She leaned in closer and read his spelling. No accident. She frowned. What? Ray spelled again. Someone wanted me dead. Angela's face drained of color. Sims glanced at her. What's he saying? Something's not right, she murmured. She turned to Ray. Do you know who? Ray blinked once. Yes. Max let out a deep growl. It wasn't just survival now. This was bigger. Ray wasn't just a coma patient miraculously. Returning, he was a witness, and someone in that hospital or on that call had tried to silence him permanently. Angela's instincts kicked in. Lock this room. No visitors unless cleared. I want surveillance logs pulled and every staff entry since the night he came in reviewed. Sims hesitated. You think? I don't think. I know. She looked at Max. And so does he. Max moved closer to Ray, placing his paw gently on his chest. He wasn't guarding a dying man anymore. He was protecting the only living proof of a crime no one had seen coming. The ICU room had become a fortress. Angela had personally ordered the locks changed and surveillance cameras checked, while the hospital staff moved through the halls with a new, cautious edge. Everyone was whispering about Ray Miller, the officer who should have been gone but was now awake and telling them he'd been targeted. Max sat by the bed, eyes sharp and unwavering, as if guarding more than just a man. He was guarding a secret. Ray's hand trembled as he spelled out another message. Inside help. Angela's heart sank. The implication was clear. Someone within the police force, or even the hospital, had tried to end Ray's life. Ray, Angela said softly, do you remember who? Ray blinked slowly, then squeezed her hand once for yes. We need you to rest, but we'll protect you, Angela promised, glancing at Max. The dog's ears perked up at her words. Outside the room, a flurry of activity was underway. Emily Miller paced nervously, talking on the phone with a detective assigned to the case. They're saying someone wanted my brother dead, she whispered, voice cracking. But who? And why? Inside the room, Ray was exhausted, but the words weighed heavy in the air. Sims had just returned with preliminary results from the scans. Ray's brain injury was severe, but the signs of waking and the voluntary responses were unprecedented. There's hope, but it'll be a long road. Ray's fingers spelled again, evidence under truck. Angela's eyes widened. She looked toward Max, who suddenly stood nose twitching, tail stiff. Max moved to the door, looking back to make sure he was followed. Where? Angela asked. Ray blinked toward the window facing the hospital parking lot. Max bolted out of the room with Angela and Sims rushing after him. Outside, Max led them down the hall and into the parking garage beneath the hospital. The concrete smelled of damp and oil, and the shadows cast by the flickering fluorescent lights played tricks on their eyes. Max stopped at a beat-up police vehicle, its hood dented and windshield cracked. He sniffed beneath it, then pawed at the ground frantically. Angela crouched down. What is it, boy? Max growled low, then barked sharply. Sims called the hospital security. Get a team down here and carefully dig under the truck. Minutes. Later, they uncovered a small sealed plastic bag hidden beneath some dirt and gravel. Inside were several USB drives, a folded note, and a small pistol magazine. Angela's hands trembled as she held up the note. Written hastily, the message read, If T. Anything happens to me, the truth is in the files. They are watching, trust no one. Sims glanced at Angela. This is a leak, classified. This could blow the whole case wide open. Max barked again and nuzzled Ray's hand as if to say, We're not done yet. Angela looked back at the ICU doors. Someone in the hospital had been part of the conspiracy, whether out of greed, fear, or something darker. But Max's instincts and Ray's courage had uncovered the first piece of a deadly puzzle. Emily entered the parking garage, tears streaming. Max, you saved my brother, she whispered, kneeling down to hug the dog tightly. Max licked her cheek, his mission far from over. Back in the ICU, Ray's lips moved faintly for the first time. A whisper, barely audible. Thank you. The hospital's sterile halls suddenly felt suffocating. Angela paced outside Ray's ICU room, replaying the discovery over and over. A hidden stash of evidence, a warning note, and a pistol magazine. Pieces of a puzzle revealing a conspiracy far darker than she'd imagined. Sims was reviewing the newly recovered files from the USB drives, frowning as lines of encrypted data scrolled across his laptop screen. They're not just covering up an accident, he muttered. This goes all the way up. Internal affairs might be compromised. Angela's phone buzzed. It was Emily, Ray's sister. Something's happening at the precinct, Emily whispered, voice trembling. There was a break-in last night. Files stolen. They're trying to erase everything. Max, sitting quietly at the foot of the bed, lifted his head at the news. His eyes gleamed with the same fierce determination that had saved Ray's life. Inside the room, Ray's condition was fragile. but stable. His eyes, though weak, followed every movement with awareness. Angela held his hand gently. "We're going to find out who did this," she promised. Suddenly, the hospital lights flickered. For a split second, the room plunged into darkness. Power surge or something else? Max's ears shot up. He growled low, his body tense. Angela's heart pounded. "Max, stay close." Outside the ICU, nurses whispered about suspicious figures spotted near restricted areas. Security cameras showed a shadowy figure tampering with equipment. Angela realized this wasn't just a hospital anymore. It was a battlefield. The doctors and nurses guarded Ray like precious cargo, but Max was the real sentinel. No one entered without his approval. Sims came in with a grim expression. "The data on the drives, it's a damning record of illegal operations. Evidence that certain officers were involved in drug trafficking and silencing whistleblowers." Angela's eyes widened. "They tried to kill Ray because he knew." "Exactly," Sims said, "and now they're trying to finish the job." Suddenly, Ray's hand twitched violently. Angela and Sims rushed to his side. He spelled with trembling fingers, "They're here." The door to the ICU burst open. Several men in plain clothes rushed in, federal agents by their look. One of them barked, "We're here to protect the patient and secure the evidence." Angela relaxed but warned, "No one leaves this room without a full report." Max growled once, then allowed the agents to approach. Emily entered, tears streaming. "Ray," she whispered, "you're safe now." Ray's eyes locked on Max's. The dog gave a soft bark, almost a promise. Later, in a secured conference room, Angela, Sims, Emily, and the lead federal agent, Agent Carter, pored over the evidence. "We need to expose this from the inside," Carter said. "But it'll be dangerous." Angela nodded. "Max and Ray gave us the chance. We have to take it." Max sat quietly at her feet, the weight of his loyalty and courage palpable. Outside, the city carried on unaware of the quiet war unfolding in a small hospital room, a battle between justice and corruption, life and death. Ray's fight was no longer just for survival. It was for truth. And with Max by his side, no secret would stay buried. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the walls. Cameras buzzed quietly. And the tension in the air was so thick it felt like the entire city was holding its breath. On the front row sat Emily, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Max seated loyally by her side, fur brushed and badge shining on his collar. Ray Miller wasn't there in person, still confined to his hospital bed, but his voice, recorded only days earlier, played loudly over the courtroom speakers. "I was told to look the other way. When I didn't, they came after me. I trusted them. One of them was my partner." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Behind the prosecution table sat Agent Carter, his voice strong as he presented the recovered evidence. Encrypted files, surveillance, logs, and Max's incredible role in unearthing it all. "A K-9 partner doesn't just follow commands," Carter said. "He follows instinct, loyalty, and he led us straight to the truth when no one else would." Max didn't react to the applause that followed. His eyes stayed forward, focused, as if still guarding Ray even from afar. The verdicts came quickly after that. Detective Colin Vance, Ray's longtime partner and the mastermind behind the operation, was found guilty of attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. 3 other officers were indicted alongside him. The entire precinct was put under federal oversight. Back at the hospital, the news aired live. Ray watched the screen with tears in his eyes, his breathing shallow but steady. Angela stood beside him. "They're going away, Ray. It's over." He blinked slowly, then used the voice assist tablet to type, "Not over, justice only begins now." Outside the ICU, Max waited with unusual stillness. For the first time in weeks, there was no emergency, no sirens, no chase. Just the quiet peace of a battle survived. A nurse approached with a small box wrapped in blue velvet. She knelt down and opened it in front of Max. Inside was a medal, a gold star specially commissioned by the governor's office, engraved with the words, "For unwavering loyalty and valor, K-9 Max." Max stared at it. Then, slowly, deliberately, he raised his paw and placed it over the box. The nurse smiled through tears. "He knows." Later that evening, Ray was transferred to a private rehabilitation center. His speech was slowly returning. His strength, building day by day. The doctors called his recovery unprecedented, but Ray always pointed at Max and typed the same sentence. He saved me twice, once from death and once from silence. Weeks passed. Ray learned to walk again, first with a walker, then with Max by his side, guiding him down the hospital hallway like nothing had changed, but everything had. On the day of his return home, officers lined the streets. People held signs that read, "Welcome back, Officer Ray, and thank you, Max." Ray stood at the threshold of his house, hand on Max's head, and whispered hoarsely, "Home." Max wagged his tail slowly, eyes never leaving Ray's. That night the two sat quietly in the backyard. No lights, no sirens, just the wind and the stars. Ray reached down and placed his hand on Max's back. "You felt it," he murmured, "when no one else did." Max leaned against him with a content sigh, then rested his head on Ray's knee, because this wasn't just a story of survival, it was a story of trust, of unspoken bonds, of a dog who refused to say goodbye, because somewhere, deep in his soul, he knew it wasn't over yet, and thanks to him, it never was.